in Mark chapter 5 today. I hope you brought your Bible. We're actually going to start in Mark chapter 4. I'm no theologian or Bible scholar, but I think they put the chapter in the wrong place. So we're going to start in chapter 4, verse 35 here in a moment. Last week we were in chapter 4, and we talked about the parable of the four soils and how the soils illustrated our hearts, and specifically our hearts and how we listen. And how we listen and thus also obey God reflects how we see him, how we understand him, how we respect him, how we honor him, and how we see him, how we relate to him. And later in chapter 4, if you read during the week, he continues with parables of seeds and the seeds depicting the kingdom and how the kingdom grows just as a seed grows into plants. And those take us up to verse 34 and 35, where we're going to start today. Today, I've intentionally chosen not to preach through chapter 5, maybe as I normally do. Instead, I'm going to tell it as a story. And the reason why is this. This is the story, the accounts of one day with Jesus that his disciples experienced. And it's easy for us to read these kind of accounts and they're just ink on a page. And because we were not there and present with them, our minds naturally just kind of sterilize things. They simplify things. They boil it down to the simplest of denominators that may not actually be true of what happened in that situation. And so I hope by telling it, and I'm going to tell it from the perspective of one of the disciples, I hope that we experience it in a new way. Okay? I hope that we walk away truly feeling and understanding this passage in maybe a depth, a personalness that we wouldn't have otherwise, okay? So, chapter 4, verse 35. When Jesus was done preaching that day, he'd given us a lot to think about. You know, he'd been in that boat teaching off the shoreline for a long time, and he'd been teaching in these parables that we'd been trying to figure out, we'd been thinking about, and eventually he said, okay, we're done. We're done for today. And then he made a suggestion that I wasn't real crazy about. He said, let's go over to the other side of the lake, the other side of the Sea of Galilee. Now, this is the area known as Decapolis. This is the place where there were 10 cities. These were all pagan cities by Gentile believers. People had just some strange beliefs, and I really wasn't crazy about this. We'd never gone over there before, and I didn't really want to go, but that's what he said. So we're going, I guess. And, you know, this was no big deal for some of the guys who were fishermen because they'd been out on the lake a lot before, and especially at night when it's, let's face it, a little more scary at night. But I'm not a fisherman, so this wasn't something I was real comfortable with. But, you know, sure enough, he said go. The guys started working, getting the boat ready and putting up the sails and whatever else, and we launched off across the lake right as the sun was going down over the horizon. Now, as it went down in the distance, we could see some clouds, and they looked innocent enough, and it wasn't a big deal to us. And it was really a pleasant night, and so the sailing started really well. And Jesus, he was exhausted from all his teaching, so he went down in the boat and was sleeping. And the rest of us were talking. We were trying to figure out these parables. We were trying to figure out what do some of these mean that he had told us. When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this storm clouds went from clear out on the horizon to right here. The wind came up. It like started pushing the boat around. The waves started really swelling all around us. The fishermen, they knew what to do. They started jumping around. They were shouting orders, go grab this rope, pull that one, do this over here, trying to move the sails to keep us going in the right way. But it just got worse and worse and worse, and we couldn't stop it, and the waves were getting higher and higher, and they started crashing over the edge. And I was scared to death because I'm not a seagoer, right? It's not my deal. But the guys, they seemed to know what they were doing. They kept rushing around and move this and move that and trying to keep us going. But when I saw the fear in their eyes, I knew we're in trouble. This is not good. And so we're doing our best, doing everything they're telling us to do to keep this boat going in the right direction. And it's just not working. The waves are getting higher. The wind's getting worse. And it's getting chaotic. I'm really scared. And somebody looks around. They say, where's Jesus? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen him for a while. We go look, and he's still asleep, sound asleep, under the boat. And I'm thinking, man, I know you're tired, but get up. Like, come on. Surely you know what to do here, right? You're the leader. And so somebody goes and wakes Jesus up. And of course, he's like, what? And we tell him, we're like, look, and of course the boat's flopping around and we're trying to stand up to tell him. And he's like, all right. And so Jesus, he gets up and he comes up and he grabbing onto stuff as he comes up on to the deck. And I'll never forget it. He looked around and he said to the wind, he said, stop it. And he looked down at the waves and he said, quiet. And you'll never guess. It happened. It was like you flipped a light switch. The wind, poof, was gone as fast as it come. And the swells, immediately, you could tell, they started to calm as well as the wind stopped pushing them around. We're all looking around a little dumbfounded. You can imagine. We're like, whoa, what just happened? And Jesus looks at us and he says, why are you scared? Why do you have such little faith? And I'm like, do you not understand? This is the sea. The sea is beyond our control. What do you mean little faith? Like, I can't stop the sea. But that's exactly what he intended. That's exactly what he did. And just as calmly as he came up on deck, he went back under and back asleep. And the rest of us, we just stood there and looked at each other. We're like, did that really just happen? Like, is this a bad dream? What just happened? And of course, shouldn't surprise us, the winds blew perfectly the rest of the night to take us to the other side. None of us slept. We were too busy talking about what just happened, trying to figure it out. But sure enough, about the time the sun rose on the other horizon, there was the shore. The area of Decapolis, we were near the Gadarenes. They're people that don't have faith anything like ours. They believe in all kinds of different things, and I don't really want to be here. I don't know why we're here. I'm sure he has a purpose, but I don't get it. This is not my idea. And so we get to the shore, and I'm trying to be excited about this, but I'm not. We moor the boat, and we get off the boat. We're getting whatever supplies we need for the day, and we're headed up the hillside away from the lake. And about the time we get to the top of the hillside, we hear this screaming, this shouting, this shrieking from the distance. And we're all just like, what? This is strange. And we look out there, we're looking in the distance, and like we just see this dot of this guy out there. But man, he is just all kinds of crazy screaming. And we're looking around like, what is wrong? Like, we are in a different place now, right? But sure enough, the guy's getting closer and closer and closer. And as he's getting closer, we can hear what he's actually shouting. And he's shouting at Jesus. He's saying, why are you here? Why are you here? Don't send me out. Please don't send me out of this region. He's shouting at Jesus. It's like he knows him. I've never met him. And as the guy gets closer, it's clear that he's not only just verbally crazy, he looks crazy too. His clothes are disheveled. He's dirty. He's all cut up and marred up like he's been beaten. And this is scary, honestly. I've never seen this in my life. What is this guy doing? And as he gets closer and closer, we not only see that he looks strange, but the strangest things of all is he has shackles on his wrists and legs and chains dragging behind him that he is broken somewhere, somehow. Who is this guy? But sure enough, as he gets closer, it's getting louder and louder, and he keeps saying the same things over and over and over. And as he gets right up to us, we're all backing away thinking, uh-oh. And Jesus steps forward and says, come out of this man. What is your name? And the man falls before Jesus, and the man says, my name is Legion. Now, the man's name wasn't Legion. The demons possessing him was a legion of demons, thousands of them. This man wasn't just possessed by one, by thousands. This is scary for me. I'll be honest, this is not my cup of tea. I haven't been around this much, and this guy's a little scary. But Jesus knew exactly what to do. This man was coming to Jesus, and in front of him, almost like he was begging for his life, like he felt threatened in some way by Jesus' very presence. I didn't understand it. About this time, as the sun was coming up and it was getting light, the herdsmen were bringing their pigs out from town for their morning grazing. Now, I don't know if you like pigs. I hate pigs. They're dirty. They're filthy animals. I mean, who likes bacon? Like, they're pigs. Ugh. This never happens in Israel, only on this side of the lake. And we all saw them. We heard the oinking, the grunting, all that kind of stuff. And immediately the man says, "Don't send me out. Instead, send me into the pigs." And Jesus thinks for a moment and says, "Okay, go to the pigs." And this man like convulses forward. And it's like coming out of him, almost like vomiting out of him, are these thousands of demons that just pour out of him and go across the hillside and into these pigs. And you see these pigs go from otherwise fairly docile, just rooting around, doing their feeding, doing their thing, to just swarming and making chaos and noise and all their oinking and grunting and just total chaos all of a sudden, this whole herd. And then they take a right turn and whoom, and off they go, and whew, off the cliff into the sea. Now, all of us are standing here looking at each other going, what just happened? This is twice today we've had this look on our face. Total disbelief. What is happening today? The herdsmen were scared to death, as you can imagine. They headed back into town, and we just stood there and watched as Jesus knelt down to this man who was laying limp on the ground. Jesus bent down, kind of sat him up. "Are you okay?" The man was like, "Yeah." Jesus gave him some water, cared for him. We kind of moved over to a shaded area where he could kind of get his strength from what had just happened. Jesus asked the man his name, got to know him a little bit. We sat around trying to do our best to be kind and care for him, but we're a little weirded out. Probably an hour or so had passed when we started hearing a commotion coming back over the hill. It wasn't just the herdsmen this time, it was most of the town too. They were coming out and they didn't sound real happy. And the closer they got, the less happy they sounded. By the time they got to us, we figured out real quick they were not happy and they were scared. See, this sort of thing, this casting out of demons, was not something they were used to seeing either. They had never experienced this, and they didn't know who we were. They didn't know what we were up to, but they wanted us out. And so they were demanding us to go, to leave their area. Jesus, being kind as he is, he said, "Okay." So he said, let's go, guys. And we headed back towards the lake shore. About the time we did, the man who had the demon, he stands up, he's like, "Hey, wait. I want to come with you. Like, you just changed my life. I want to follow you." And I kind of expected Jesus to say, "All right, come on." But he didn't. He said, No. He said, "You need to stay here. And you need to tell all these people how God has changed your life." You could see kind of the disappointment in his face. But yet, he's like, "All right." And so we headed down to the lake. We got in the boat. We pushed off. And in the heat of the day, just like it took us several hours to get here, now it takes us several hours to get back. And Jesus, still exhausted, goes and takes another nap. And the rest of us are having this conversation. What's happening today? I can't believe my eyes. What are we experiencing? Who is this man? Like, we know him, but we don't know him. This is unique. And sure enough, we drift asleep and we take our naps while we're going across. We get to the other side, and about the time we get to the other side, we see the crowds waiting. The crowds, again, they're everywhere. It's like somebody sent them an invitation. They knew right where we were going to be. There they are. I don't know why they hang around. All they want's like the sideshow, right? Teach us more healings, more tricks and ponies, right? I don't get it. But there they were, pressing up against the shore when we get there. And as we were getting the boat moored and getting onto shore, there was this one man, this Jewish leader, who came up to the front of the group. And I thought, oh, great. These guys never want to have fun. They're always grumpy and mad about something when it comes to Jesus and us. And so I'm like, oh, all right. We kind of get ready. We're like, all right, here he is. But as we get off the boat and we get up the shore to where he's at, I realize quickly that he's not angry. He's scared. You can see it in his face. And next thing we knew, he falls to the ground before Jesus. Now, I've never seen this. A Jewish official, a synagogue official, a Sadducee on his knees in front of Jesus? This is a crazy day. But the man is scared. And he pours out his heart to Jesus, saying, Jesus, I need your help. I need you to come. My daughter is sick. She's dying. I need you to come heal her. You can do it. Please come. And Jesus says, okay, let's go. And he helps the man up, puts his arm around him, and they head through town. Now the crowds, they don't care about Jairus' daughter. They just want their dog and pony show. So they're still pushing in, they're still pressing around, they're still following us. Us disciples, we're trying to kind of keep them away and keep the space, but it isn't working. As we get into town and the buildings get closer, it just presses everything in, and the crowd is getting kind of tighter, and things are moving, and Jesus is trying to talk to Jairus and to comfort him and get to know him a little bit as they're walking across town, but the crowd's making it really hard. And as we're walking, I didn't see this until it just happened and it was done over and I almost couldn't do anything about it. But there was this lady, and she just kind of came jumping in off to the back and to the side. And it was like she was coming at Jesus, and I just saw her out of the corner of my eye, and all I could see was that she looked terrible. Like she was diseased. She was bleeding. She had all these wounds everywhere. And I couldn't do anything. I don't know what she was trying to do, but she jumped in through the crowd to try to touch him. And thankfully, she missed. She didn't touch him. She just got the edge of his clothing as she fell to the ground. And of course, the rest of us, we don't want to touch her. She's dirty. She's unclean. We can't be unclean. And so as she falls down, we all kind of step around her as we're trying to keep things moving. But Jesus stopped. Stopped everything. He stopped walking. He stopped talking. He stopped. And he looked around and he said, who touched me? And we're like, what do you mean who touched you? Everybody's touching you. He goes, no. Somebody touched me. I felt power go out from me. And of course, at the same time he's saying that, the crowd is sort of parting, stepping away from this woman that nobody wants to touch. And so she comes in clear view of Jesus as she's laying on the ground, crying and trembling and scared. And this is the first time that I really got a good view of her. Before it happened so fast, I just kind of barely saw her. I got a clear view this time. She was perfectly healthy. Jesus knelt down to her. He took her by the hand and he said, daughter, your faith has healed you. And we looked at each other and we thought, did that really just happen? Like we all think it did. It happened so fast. Is our mind playing tricks on us? But we all stood there as he spoke to her compassionately for a moment. And soon enough, he stood up, he took her by the hand and helped her up, and she left, healthier than she'd ever been in her life. All of us are standing there just absorbed in this moment, trying to understand what has just happened. And the silence was deafening until some guy in the back came running in. He was another Jewish official. He came running in and he said, Jairus, I'm sorry, but your daughter's died. The silence was broke by him, and then wailing and screaming and mourning took over the crowd. All of these people who knew Jairus were weeping for him. Jesus, though he almost seemed undeterred, he turns, grabs Jairus by the shoulder and says, let's keep going. Have faith. And it's like our pace had quickened, his determination to ratchet it up, and we proceeded on. The crowds didn't follow as much. They were still confused about this woman and what had happened. But us disciples, we kept up as we made our way through town. When we got to Jairus' house, Jesus said, y'all stay out here. Just you three. And Jairus' family, come on in. And I didn't get to go in with him, but I could see through the window. I could see around things. I could hear the screaming, I could hear the crying, I could hear the mourning, the wailing that only happens in the Middle East, this mourning over their daughter. But I watched, and as he went in, he just simply went to her bedside, held her hand, and said, get up. Now, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't saw it for myself, but I saw it. She got up. She got up. She got out of bed and was alive. All the weeping, all the gnashing, all the screaming turned to joy, turned to tears of overflowing joy as this daughter they thought was gone was alive. You can imagine how it just burst out of them. They were so thankful they offered Jesus food, and he sat with them, and he cared for them and got to know them and had a meal with them while we waited outside. At some point, after quite a while, really, he came out. And as he came out, he said to us, hey guys, let's go home. Let's go to Nazareth. And so we left, and we went home. That's chapter 5. It's a pretty good chapter, isn't it? I like that chapter. You see how we can read these passages, and you may have read them 100 times, who knows? And it's just ink on a page. Oh, he calmed the sea. That's cool. Oh, a legion. That's interesting. But when we read it and we're in the story, and I don't know how good I am at telling stories. I hope I at least got us a step or two into the story, right? But it feels different, doesn't it? Go back later this week. I challenge you. Go back and read the story from the perspective of the other folks. Read it from the perspective of the guy who is demon-possessed. Put yourself in his shoes, what just happened that day. Or in the woman who was healed, how her life completely changed. This thing that she'd been stricken with for years, she was totally freed of. Or Jairus' family, losing a daughter and having her brought back. See, I think this passage, it's important for us to understand that these are not just cool stories that happened. These are not just Jesus doing miracles for the sake of doing miracles. There was a purpose here. There's a reason why chapter 5 comes after chapter 4. See, chapter 4 is all about, hey, listen, you should listen to me. Good soil listens and obeys. Chapter 5 is the why. Chapter 5 is the credibility for Jesus as to why we should listen. Because chapter 5 gives us these sort of 3.5 or 4, however you want to look at it, stories that demonstrate his power, his sovereignty, his authority over huge things that are yet very tangible in our lives. This should bolster our faith so that we listen. See, the first story of him calming the sea is about his power over nature. Nature is considered something that none of us have any control over. We can't make it rain or stop raining. We can't make the wind blow or stop blowing. Wish we could, right? We can't control that sort of stuff. It's outside of our realm. Certainly in their time and place, when they had neighboring cultures with these beliefs of other gods and other gods control, this idea of controlling the weather was far outside of what they believed they had control over. And yet here's the man who, if he is who he says he is, created it all, breathed it into existence, and with one sentence, turned it off. There's an extra layer here, and that is throughout their culture and throughout all of Scripture, really, from the first chapter of Genesis, the first few verses, we get this description of creation that starts with the chaos waters. These dark waters as this place that are beyond anything we have control over. And part of Genesis 1 is God bringing order to that which is chaotic. And throughout their time and their culture, we have all these stories about being out on the sea, and you connect the dots with this story to the story of Jonah. Go back and read those and pair those up. That's a really cool read. But there's this idea that the sea is this chaos that is beyond our control, that only God has control over. And in the pagan cultures, the other gods have control over. And here Jesus steps up to the plate and says, I have control over them. My power is greater than that. My authority is greater than that. That's a huge statement. When you're talking about credibility as to why we should listen, that's a pretty good one. In each of us, we have all kinds of situations in our life, whether or otherwise, that are completely outside of our control. It feels like we're caught in the midst of a storm, and there's nothing we can do about it. Just ride along and pray for the best, right? And Jesus is saying, no. I am the God of that storm as well. And just like we sang in that last song, he may not choose to take it away. In this case, he did, but he did it to prove his credibility. He may not take our storm, but we can go through the storm with the confidence of knowing he has the power to do so. If he chose, and if he isn't choosing, there's a reason. And we go to the second story. And we have these demons. We have him expressing his power over the spiritual realm. You see how that overlaps with the first story, right? And how they viewed the sea and now the demons, and having a whole legion of demons come worried about their own existence when he's barely said a thing. And he has the power over them to send them out, to cause them to fear, to overpower them. You can see why their culture would have been scared, why their response to this. The whole community knew this, man. The community had done all they could to overpower these spiritual forces in their community by chaining this man and trying to restrain him and everything they could, and they couldn't. And yet Jesus, with simple words, says, go. And they obey just like that. Because his power and his authority is even over the spiritual realm. And we go to the last story. I think of it kind of like a sandwich where the story starts and it ends with Jairus, and in the middle you have the lady's story of her healing. The lady comes up and he's expressing his power over illness, over medicine, over everything related to our health. This woman who had struggled, it says the doctors didn't know what to do. They'd been on quite a journey together. They had done all they could. I imagine that she probably had gone to different witch doctors or whatever she could think of in her community to try to have this healing happen. And it couldn't. The people had met their limits medically. They couldn't heal her. And by simply touching Jesus, and it's interesting, the text is very clear. It says, because of your faith, you're healed. She had enough faith to believe, whatever else she believed, to believe he's the guy and to go and pursue him. And I don't know about you, but I've been fighting illness this week, like all week, I've just kind of been, I know it's going around. Feels like it's been kind of that month, right? Where whatever label we've put on your particular illness, we've all been passing them around and been real generous with each other in that way. There's also some of us dealing with some really big medical stuff, isn't it? Stuff that doesn't go away a week or two. And for us, we can listen to him because he has authority even over those. He has power even over that. Knowing that if he chose to heal it, to solve it, to fix it, he could. If he chose to, he would. And if he doesn't, we can keep walking in it, knowing that's where he wants us, even if we don't like it. And then Jairus. Can't imagine being in Jairus' shoes. That's the hardest one for me. Standing over your deceased child. And then Jesus brings them back, showing his power and his authority over even death. Kind of a prelude, if you will, to what he's going to do at Easter when he resurrects, when he shows his authority over it himself. And again, there are situations where we're not just beyond ourselves, we're beyond the beyond of ourselves, where we realize exactly how helpless we are. And we can trust him in that too, because he has authority even over that. And so we look at this chapter and we look at our lives. And I don't know about you, but you probably are in one of these places or have been recently where there's something that's really got you, that's challenged you, that's pressing against your faith. And you're starting to ask yourself, can I listen to him? Can I trust him? Is he worthy of that? And he is. See, this passage not just as a demonstration of his credentials, if you will, that he is worthy of our listening and our obedience to him, hearkening back to chapter 4. It's also a chapter of hope. It's a chapter of hope that as we're in the middle of those fights that life brings us, we know that the God we serve is above all of them, has power and authority over all of them. And no matter how daunting it may be, no matter how tired you are, no matter how much you're ready to give up, he's still there. And he won't abandon you in the middle of it. See, this passage should not only give us encouragement to obey, but it should give us hope. That of all the things that we can struggle with, he's got it. He's there. He's over it. It won't make it pleasant. Won't make it fun. It doesn't mean the struggle will just pop and go away, but he's there, and we can trust him. And so I pray today as a church that would be us. I don't know about you, but I've just had enough conversations lately with folks that it's like the illness that have been going around here lately, the colds and whatever else, have just been compounded by different events, whether it's national events, whether it's more local personal events. I've just talked to several folks lately that are just like, man, like when's it going to stop? And been discouraged and been disillusioned with people, whether it's people they know or just people in general. And it just been like, oh, like I hate this season. And I get it. I'm feeling the same way. Like there's days you're just like, God, what's happening here? But he's there. His power, his authority, his presence is there. And because he is who he says he is, because he does have that position, because he is over all of it, we can have hope. We can take one more step. We can continue to listen to him. We can continue to obey. Even if we don't have the answers, even if we don't know what's over the next hill, we can take one more step. We can say, okay, today, we got it today. And we can step into today. And then tomorrow, we can get up and we can read chapter 5 and we can be reminded that he's still here. And we can take another day and another day. And I pray that's us, that we're just a community of folks that faithfully, one day at a time, one moment at a time, are keep stepping. Just keep going. Keep walking. So I pray that chapter 5 comes at the right time in our lives. And that it's girded us up today in that way. So would you pray with me, please? Father, this can be messy. It can be overwhelming. It can be not fun. Father, you know the struggles present here, macro and micro. Father, I'm sure many of us have come before you numerous times this week with that thing, that storm, that illness, that whatever it is. We brought it to you, that relationship, that struggle, that chaos. Father, I pray that we would remain faithful. We would see who you are. We would understand that you are above it all, that you have power and authority over all of it. I pray that we would be encouraged by that. The courage would be put into us. Our faith would be bolstered. Father, I pray this week that you would do something for those of us who are struggling, who need it. Similar to chapter 5, you would come and you would do something this week that would tangibly remind us you're there. You're powerful. You got it covered. You're present, and we're loved. Father, I just pray that each of us would have that boost this week, and that as we keep walking along, as we keep doing what it is you've called us to do and living how you've called us to live, that we would do so with an energy and a presence and a just knowing you are there that maybe we hadn't had before. Father, thank you for your faithfulness, for your grace, for your mercy, for your generosity, for pouring out blessing upon us. You are faithful and you are good. We love you. So we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.